Welcome back, Survivors, episode 11, season 4. This is Surviving the Season. I am Adam, Baywater Studios in Tampa, Florida. Greg is here.
Yo!
Welcome back. What up? John Kosko of PFF in the house, Pro Football Focus, I should say, not PFF. John Kosko, thanks for coming back on, man.
My pleasure. How you fellas doing?
We are doing well.
Fantastic. I'm so ready for football, though. Like, I'm sick. I'm watching interviews, trying to consume any kind of football possible, and I'm just like, they got to get this thing started already.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the dead period of content and anything really. You know, once the draft is over. I mean, obviously it's a busy time for teams because they've got OTAs and minicamp, and they're all gearing up for that type of stuff and getting the rookies ready. But from a media perspective, or just from an outsider perspective, it's kind of like a waiting period.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do with the interviews. You know, nobody's really telling the truth in those interviews anyway. There's none of it's really media worthy. But
right, then, I mean, it's you just get like the generic questions of like, what is this offense going to look like? It's like, it's day 2, guys.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out. That's exactly what we're trying to figure it out, but. What more really can you ask at these things? You get Freddie up there and Kareem, they had Kareem Hunt obviously yesterday, and it was like 18 minutes straight of his deal, and hopefully that's the end of that. And next time he's talking, they can talk to him about football. But he went through that, so that I guess you get that out of the way. If you're Kareem Hunt, you don't have to. You face the media. It went relatively well. He faced up to everything, so that was one thing. But Baker gets up there and. It's saying they're asking him about Odell and what's the offense going to look like, and it's just like, well, we'll see. Same thing, like you said, we're 2 days in, and the whole time we're sitting there on Twitter going, oh man, you see Higgins catch, and that's what we get, one rep at a time. Or do you see Greedy get burnt? And there's just not enough there for us to consume. I'm almost thinking they need to start opening these things up to the fans like they do the media right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be fun for the fans, but really it's, like you get one rep of somebody roasting somebody else, and it doesn't paint at all the whole picture, like that video of Greedy getting burned. He's playing off man, something that he rarely did at LSU, and he's a press man corner, so they're obviously, hey, you are going to have to play off man. We want you to learn the better techniques for this. And so that's what this period is for. So,
especially in that one-on-one, like that, when you're going in that one-on-one, you don't have any help. It's just, a corner versus the wide receiver. The wide receiver knows where he's going. It just seems like there is a distinct advantage there for the wide receiver in that drill.
Absolutely. Because for one, when it comes to the team setting, if you're going up against an opponent, you're studying their tendencies. And so you see what personnel they have out there, what formation they have out there, and then what down and distance is, and, when it is. And you can kind of figure out, all right, these are the package of plays that they run from, in this situation from this formation. So then you can be ready for, there's a very likely chance that this guy is going to be running a deep post here. So I'm going to be ready for that, as opposed to this guy, they like to run a deep comeback from this. So like those one-on-ones are heavily skewed in favor of the offense because that's just the nature of what those are. So, I mean,
and
are
no contact as well.
Right. And it's good for, it's good to do those, obviously to improve your technique and everything like that. But really taking much out from a single video is a futile effort.
Well, I'm pretty sure Greedy's going to be a bust now. That's what I've taken away from it. The other thing is, like, you have help too. I mean, you're going to be playing certain techniques. Like, there's probably going to be a safety that's also going to be playing in that area with Greedy on that coverage, most likely. Or you wouldn't expect him to get beat that soundly. But how much can you take away from that? But you did bring up the thing about Greedy, about him playing not that much off man. The hot topic is Steve Wilkes. His defense played a lot more zone. I don't know how much zone compared to man, but that's what.
Well, I can tell you that. So when he was with the Panthers, so he was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and so you could look at their defense there, and it was obviously his defense, but he wasn't actually calling the plays. So I understood. So if you look at when he was the DC with the Panthers, he was very light on cover one. He was about 18% of the time in man, which is one of the lowest in the NFL, like bottom 4 in the NFL, and how often he ran man. He was heavy cover 3, so about 40% cover 3, which is the 4th most in the NFL. And also did a good number of quarters coverage too, so at 21%, which is one of the second highest in the NFL. So you're looking at. Can you
explain the difference real quick to people who don't know the difference between like cover 1, cover 3?
Right. All right. So cover 1 is a man coverage with a single high free safety. You can have another hole defender, which would be a zone defender underneath, but essentially you've got man across the board. So if Greedy Williams lines up across from, Julio Jones in a man coverage, he's got him man to man. He's going to follow him all around the field. If you have cover 3, that's typically you have 3 players deep in coverage, covering the deep thirds, breaking up a 1/3 of the field. And then underneath, you got 4 underneath, typically covering zones there. There can be match techniques within that, but we'll just leave it as, covering zones of the field like that. Quarters coverage would be considered, 4 deep. So when you have typically 2 corners that are covering the outside quarter parts of the field deep, and then you have 2 safeties covering the inside quarters of the field. So those are the basic coverages. And so when somebody talks about cover 2, you have 2 deep. So every time it's, cover 1 means that there's 1 deep, but that's considered a man coverage because everybody's matched up. Cover 2 means the 2 are deep, 3 are deep, 4 are deep. And then that's about what it comes to when you're talking about basic coverages.
Right. Okay. And so Steve Wilks is playing a lot more cover 3 last year.
Yeah.
Than anything else, and which is surprising. Well, he wasn't technically calling the plays like you said, but you have like a Patrick Peterson who would be more like a Greedy Williams, like more of a man corner, and the same thing with Denzel Ward, right? More of a man corner.
Yeah,
definitely in college.
Yeah, so both Greedy Williams and Denzel Ward were heavy press man corners in college, and it's obviously 2 years in a row now that John Dorsey has drafted the best press man corner coming out of college. So I think you're kind of seeing a trend of what he likes from his cornerback position. So those guys were the best in the position doing that. And so they're going to be doing like with Patrick Peterson is also that type of a cornerback. Steve Wilks is a heavy zone guy and a lot of off zone. So it's going to be interesting to see if he adjusts his scheme to fit his players, which is obviously what you hope he does, because Denzel Ward last year had the second highest coverage grade in man coverage in the NFL as a rookie, which is phenomenal. And so that's like a pretty predictive in terms of when it comes to the cornerback position of, success, stable success year to year. So if he continues, but the thing is, if he flips the scheme on the team and does what he has always done, which is heavy zone, then you're kind of, it's going to be interesting to see because, while the Greedy Williams and Denzel Ward are both good in zone, it's not where they're best at. So it'll be interesting to see how Steve Wilks adjusts his scheme to fit the players. He's a heavy blitz coordinator, so he loves to do like fire zone. With the fire zone is a cover 3 look with you're sending some type of blitz package at the quarterback to confuse the quarterback from that respect, and that's a good scheme to do if you have players that can run that scheme. You just want to obviously be able to do what the players do best. So I know from what the personnel says is to run a lot of press man from at least for the cornerback position, but he likes to do zone. So if he doesn't adjust, you're going to have like maybe some adjustment periods from the players, or they might see some struggles that you didn't see from Denzel Ward last year that you see this year.
Compared to Greg Williams, like what was Greg Williams' percentage of running? I don't know if you have this with you. I'm probably putting you on a spot here of running man compared to zone.
So Greg Williams had
like night and day.
Yeah, it is. So like Greg Williams had 29%, so more than like almost double for man coverage. He had cover one, 29%. We also chart cover 2 man, which is you have 2 high safeties, but it's man underneath. He ran that about the 3rd most in the NFL last year. So you're looking at what he did is deployed a lot of man compared to the Steve Wilks, but he also still ran a ton of cover 2 and a decent amount of cover 3. So he was at 25, about 25% of the time cover 2, is about 23% of the time at cover 3. So it's not a foreign, he still obviously ran a lot of cover 3, almost 0 cover 4. So something that Steve Wilks likes to run in quarters coverage, Greg Williams ran almost none of it. He had 3 times in.
Interesting.
So
okay,
there's going to be some differences, obviously, because Greg Williams loves his cover 2 and he loves his man, whereas Steve Wilks loves his cover 3 and his cover 4. But still, Greg Williams still ran a decent amount of cover 3. So there's some, and there's also in cover 3, you still have some man principles in cover 3. So not all the time when you run cover 3, you're just dropping into zones. Sometimes those slot cornerbacks will match up, and so even the outside cornerbacks will match up in cover 3, where you have some other guys that drop into zones.
Interesting. Okay. So how did Steve Wilks? So if Steve Wilks played a lot more quarters, is that maybe part of the reason why? Would you think Jabril Peppers is a quarters style safety, or were they doing that out of when they were in nickel, or what are they going to want safeties that are better in coverage rather than playing in the box? There seems to be a different. What did you see, I guess, with the way Steve Wilks what he did with his safeties?
Yeah, so he mixes them up at least a bit. You want somebody to be able to play the single high, and you want players that can play into the quarters. So he wants, you want your guys to be versatile and can play in multiple different roles. So they have obviously Demarius Randall, who's really good in a single high, but also can play in the slot. But he's not a guy that I'd want to play in the box as a strong safety in that area. So you have that, but you have also Morgan Burnett, who is better as a strong safety, better in run support in that regard. And then you talk about backups of those guys, kind of, you'll see how it all plays out. But you got Sheldrick Redwine, who is kind of in the mold of Demarius Randall, so he can develop behind Randall. You'll see some snaps that he might get this year. You probably don't see a lot, but he'll kind of fit into that mold. But I think what you want is guys who are versatile, that can do multiple types of different things in his scheme, and that's what you've got in these guys that they've drafted. Even Aaron Murray here, who is that his first name? Aaron?
Eric Murray.
Eric Murray, yeah. Aaron's the quarterback.
From Georgia, right?
Right, yeah. So he's a versatile guy that you can play in the slot and out wide and also deep and stuff like that. But all these guys, you want them to be better as coverage players than they are run defenders. But you got a Morgan Burnett who is going to be able to play in the box, and he's a solid. He can play solid in coverage, in the slot, matching up with tight ends and backs, but also good in run support.
Okay, I was going to ask you about Morgan Burnett as being a replacement for Jabril Peppers, but you're making it sound like it wasn't just Morgan Burnett; it's a combination of all these guys, sort of, to replace Peppers. Is that what you're?
Yeah, for sure. Because he's kind of like in the style of Jabril Peppers, right? He's not going to be as athletic as Jabril Peppers, but essentially Peppers was the strong safety, but he was able to play deep because he had he gotten exposed to that as a rookie. But typically, you're playing Jabril Peppers in the box, underneath zones, matching up with tight ends and stuff like that, in a blitz package. Morgan Bennett's not going to be the guy that as good as a blitzer as Jabril Peppers, but I think as a run defender and an underneath coverage player, they're about on par.
Interesting. The word out of OTAs right now is that Jermaine Whitehead is getting a lot of reps as like a third safety or maybe like a nickel corner. I'm not there, so I don't get to see it, but that's the way they're claiming. They're playing three safeties with Burnett, Randall, and Whitehead with the first group right now, which means nothing. I mean, we're so far out, but it's interesting. Like, do you know? There's not much that I know about Jermaine Whitehead. Do you have any information that maybe you can share with us?
Yeah. So he's a guy that he has very few snaps in the slot or whatever. He's not a guy that you're going to probably see playing deep for them, but he can. And I think he's pretty solid there. But from the slot, and over the last 3 years, just 101 snaps. So it's not like there's a big sample size for him, even just playing. And he didn't grade all that well there, albeit it's a small sample size. He was at a 58.8 there. He's a little bit better deep in the 60s of his grade, but he's not a guy that's just been able to get the opportunity to have a lot of snaps and show it. But even so, in his opportunities, he hasn't graded all that well.
Okay, so it might be a guy that surprises us a little bit this year if he continues to play well. What about we brought in Greedy Williams, but Terrence Mitchell's still there. What do you think of Terrence Mitchell? And do you think this is Greedy's job, or he's really going to have to go out there and play ball to beat out Terrence?
Well, I mean, he obviously has to beat out Terrence, but I think that he should be able to. I think Mitchell is kind of like an enforcer or whatever, and he's kind of like an aggressive player. He's fine. I know that people loved what he was able to bring to the table last year, but really, I think it was a bit overrated on what his ability was.
Browns fans don't overrate their players, John.
Never.
I've never met one that does.
Yeah, right? Like, it just never happens. But I mean, he's not somebody that's graded exceptionally well, and he was graded at about an average level over the course of his career. So he's not somebody that's, he doesn't get his hands on a ton of balls. In 4 years, he just has 6 interceptions and 18 pass breakups. Not terrible numbers, but not great numbers. And then he's given up 10 touchdowns. And in 2017, his last full year, he gave up, one of the most yards per route run or yards per cover snap in the NFL. He was better last year. Obviously, he averaged, when he was targeted, 11 yards per target, which is solid, but not anything spectacular. In his last full year, that was up at 16.6. So it's cornerback play is pretty, especially for somebody like him, where he's not. I mean, he's a NFL rosterable position player, but he's not going to be, your top, in the top, I'd say third or even half of the NFL. He's more of a mid-tier type guy. And so you're going to see some play, he's going to have flashes in the pan, which you saw, and that's what fans overrate. But then you have, this, you also have struggles like he did in 2017, where he gave up a whole crap ton of yards. So,
right. Okay. So solid depth still, even if he gets beat out, it's a player worth having in there.
Right. And I would have to hope that he does get beat out, because I just think that Greedy Williams, from it obviously depends on scheme and everything like that, but Greedy Williams is the better player. I think better prospect. He might not be just yet, but I think he definitely will develop in that, and I think he can do that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he has to work for it. It's not handed to him here. That always makes it better. And it's just because we're on the secondary here. Donnie Lewis, 7th round pick this year. Anything you got on him?
Yeah, he graded at pretty much just an average level. For every year, of his career. He had a 73.1 overall grade last year. Better as a run defender than he was in coverage, but he didn't stand out in really any particular way. And then there's not even any workout data that he had. He was injured for all of the off season of draft prep. So I think he's a guy that probably gets onto the practice squad. If everything goes right for him, that he might be able to make the bottom part of the 53-man roster. But he's not a guy that I would expect to really compete for anything, especially this year.
Okay. Let's just continue a little bit here with the defense and talk about our second pick, but in the third round this year, Sione Takitaki. Was that a surprise to you, or do you think that's about where he fit?
I think that's about where he should have gone. But I think obviously a lot of people pre-draft weren't talking about him because it's a linebacker from BYU. But this is a guy that I really liked him coming out. I think, he first had the two linebackers, the two Devons. So those were the top two, anybody's, boards basically. And then from 3 until 10, you kind of had a group of linebackers that you can kind of, depending on who you asked, could have ranked them in any sort of order. And there was a couple of us at PFF that really liked Takitaki and actually had him as our third linebacker, me being one of them. So nice. He's a guy that was, obviously converted edge rusher from 2017. He played over 600 snaps on the edge, was very productive there, great run defender, was really good as a pass rusher, and then converted to linebacker in 2018. And early in 2018, he missed a ton of tackles from the off linebacker position. But then, once but week 5 on, he only, that cut way down, he reduced his number of missed tackles by over half. So, one of the things he was, is a heat-seeking missile. He's going to fly all over the field. He's got, elite athleticism, and he's a guy, I think, in coverage, really has some upside because, he was still learning the position last year, and he can get to depths and spaces in coverage that other players dream about. Like Mac Wilson, right. Mac Wilson is a guy that obviously was drafted in the 5th round, and a lot of people, because he's Alabama and was a 5-star athlete, was like, oh, if he would have stayed in school one more year, he'd be a first-round talent. And it's like, no, he has average athleticism, and then. He wasn't all that productive at Alabama. He graded out at an average level. Like Takitaki is everything you look at him is much better than Mac Wilson. Well, Mac Wilson can dream about the areas of field that Takitaki can get to. So
it's like Takitaki has his recognition skills to Mac Wilson's are just on a different level. Mac Wilson has to see it before he reacts, and Takitaki's relatively new to that position, but he attacks, man.
Yeah, he just has those natural instincts when it comes to just as a football player in general, I think. And so I think Mac Wilson has the ability to could be a good special teams player for the Browns, but I think Takitaki is like the guy that you're really looking at to fill that come in and be able to start for the Browns and have a significant number of defensive snaps this year.
Yeah. Well, there was some buzz about a guy that just got traded today, Darren Lee from the Jets. He went for a 6th-round pick to Kansas City from the Jets after the GM gets fired, and Adam Gase. We can talk about that later if we feel like it. But that's a name there. Where are you at with Darren Lee? Like for a 6th-round pick, you could have taken somebody else for Matt, with Mac Wilson's pick in the 5th round, but. Of course, you don't know this. You don't know the GM's going to get fired. Chances are they're probably wanting a lot more, and when he gets fired, they make the deal right away. But ends up going for a 6th-round pick. What do you think of Darren Lee?
He was better last year, and he definitely has not lived up to his draft billing. And I think when coming out, we had him as a 3rd-round prospect or whatever, and I think that's probably where he should have gone based on what we've seen so far in the NFL. Obviously, a super elite athlete, but he's not somebody with the instincts to that you can rely on. And I think maybe you could see that his, from a grade aspect, he was bad. He was like one of the worst linebackers in the NFL for his first 2 years in the league. And then last year, he still struggled as a run defender. And, whenever they blitzed him, he wasn't great as a pass rusher. But his pass coverage grade took like a monster, trajectory up. But, I would have to worry about how sustainable that is for him. And I think for Kansas City, they definitely need help in terms of coverage linebackers, and his speed and athleticism kind of would say, hey, yeah, you could be that. And then you could see like, hey, he improved dramatically in his third year. I think that's a good get for the Chiefs for the 6th round pick. For the Jets, it's, I can understand why they did it. For the Browns, it maybe, I wouldn't be excited about the trade if it was the Browns. I think it's like it's like a whatever. It's like, all right, maybe we'll take a flyer on this guy who's a former first rounder, and he's not going to cost all that much. So I think it would have been a solid trade. It's almost like a Bill Belichick type thing. It's like, you have a cheap player, because he's still on the 4th year. So I think the 4th year, for first round guys does go up quite a bit, but it's still, in the less than $5 million for this year. So it's not all that expensive to keep him. And, I think the Jets are kind of maybe losing out on it, but they did just, they're eating some dead cap, and they also, spent way too much money on, was it CJ Mosley? So
yeah, right. A couple different, a running back and a middle linebacker. Good luck. But I just remember Lee coming out and watching his film, and like he just never took on blocks, and I was like, his physicality is going to be an issue, and maybe he started to get that in year 3, but he was always a smaller linebacker, and he got drafted based upon his like physical, based upon his workout, how fast he was. He was super explosive in that aspect, but he just would run around every single block, and I was like, he's not going to get away with that in the NFL. Using that, because the guards and the centers are going to get up on you, and they can move. They can move also, So that's probably part of what's happened to him. But for a 6th round pick, hey, why not? Why not take a stab at a guy? But
I got a salary here in front of me. It's $1.8 million this year. They already declined the 5th year option for next year, so it's a 1 year player, and he'll be unrestricted after this season.
Yeah, and if he plays decently, Chiefs are known for making these types of trades and then extending their guys if they fit what they're doing or whatever. Like with, they wasted money on Cameron Irving.
They signed him too.
Right. Like they traded for him and then signed him to like a 3-year, $25 million deal or whatever it was. I can't remember. That's probably way over what he actually got. But any money you give to him is a waste. So. He's so bad. Like it's just he's consistently graded as a bottom 5 guard in the NFL, and he was on a championship caliber team last year, and so people think, oh, he's improved so much, and it's like no, it's just a scheme that protected him. You had some good offensive linemen around him, and when I say good, like Eric Fisher's okay. Mitchell Schwartz is the best lineman in the NFL last year. Mitch Morris and Austin Ryder are solid centers. So he basically doesn't have, left guard position is basically the least important offensive line position there is. And so you were able to do things to protect that guy and from scheme wise and people around him. And that's what they did. But they're still hemorrhaging money at that position to him.
Interesting. So let me stick with that linebacker group just real quick, because, it makes sense to not go after, we pick up 2 guys in the draft. Makes sense not to go after Darren Lee when you still have Joe Schobert, Christian Kirksey, Darius Taylor was signed. So they've got a number of names, Gerard Avery. But my question is, how does Steve Wilkes use his linebackers? How often does he go to that nickel package where he's only running 2 linebackers? And how often? I assume in Carolina, where they actually had good linebackers, he probably played 3 linebackers a lot more often than what he did in Arizona.
You're absolutely right about that. So in Carolina, he had the 3 linebackers out on the field I think it was first. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but first or second most in the NFL, like 50 to 55% amount of the time. But then in Arizona, he had 3 linebackers out on the field only like 10% of the time. He was in sub package 90% of the time with Arizona. Part of that is obviously, you're doing, based on who your opponent is and what their personnel is out on the field, but that's quite the discrepancy there. Like you're obviously recognized, man, my linebacker's not good in Arizona. I need to have defensive backs out there. And it's a passing league. Obviously they're going up against the Rams, twice a year, but even still, like obviously the 49ers and the Seahawks are heavy run teams. So like they basically were at a personnel disadvantage when it came to being able to switch things up from them. But what he likes to do is he likes to blitz, and he'll get those guys moving all over the place, and dropping them into zones, blitzing, stunting, looping, all sorts of things. So he'll have those guys doing a lot of different things for the defense. And you look at something like Jannard Avery, I would hope that he's going to be played much more on the edge because that's where he's best at. And I think this, you'll see that the scheme is going to be a lot more friendly to the linebackers than what Greg Williams' scheme was, because you look at Greg Williams when they drop into cover 2 or 3 and they tell him to get back 15 yards and then come into rally to make a tackle.
Yeah.
But you still get, like, the issue there is that, like, you're leaving so much space underneath that it's, I don't know, ripe for missed tackles. Whereas if you don't, drop the normal 10 to 12 yards, you have more players that can rally to the runner or the back that's catching it, dumping off from the backfield. There's more there, and there's less space for that guy to make that guy miss. So I think you're going to see them utilized a lot better, because they're not going to be, when the ball's caught at the 5 yards downfield, you're not going to see Joe Schobert at 20 yards downfield or something like that.
Yeah. Well, thank God, because I feel like we just got picked apart on those short passes last year, not giving time for Myles Garrett and what will be Olivier Vernon this year, and Sheldon Richardson. That's where these guys, why we bring them in. We want to get pressure. If you're not giving them time to get pressure, you're going to get killed. And also, how many times we get killed by screen passes last year?
Yeah,
it's absurd.
Absurd. That's the problem with obviously blitzing, is that if you choose the wrong times to blitz, you've got 6 players into the backfield and it's just kind of dumped behind them. Then you're left to have five just to make the tackle, but obviously usually 3 are already in coverage and being blocked, so it makes it 2 that have to defeat the offensive linemen's blocks that are going downfield. So it's not easy. It's never easy to do that. And obviously Wilkes is a heavy blitz guy too, but you're not going to see those guys, like you saw it all the time, where you knew just based on alignment pre-snap if they were going to be playing a Tampa 2 type coverage, because Joe Schobert was lined up 8 yards back. Like, that's not something that you're going to see from Steve Wilkes' defense. And and also like if you want to give Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon and the guys up front time to get to the quarterback, the way to do that is to be able to play press man and prevent the quarterback from getting rid of the ball, in quickly in under 2.5 seconds. You make them hold the ball on just for a split second longer. It allows those guys to get home and get the sack, or at least get a hit on the quarterback and make a wayward pass.
Yeah. Well, it gives me hope that Steve Wilkes will play to the team's strengths when you brought up how much more he played 3 linebackers in Carolina than he did in Arizona. So that gives me hope, because we don't know. I mean, that's the problem right now, is going into this season is there's a lot of unknown. Is Freddie going to be able to handle the head coaching responsibilities? What are we going to get with Todd Monken and him? And what's Steve Wilkes going to run? So there's some unknown there. Gives me a little bit of hope, what you just brought up.
Yeah, there is a lot of unknown, because even from like Steve Wilkes' perspective of being a defensive coordinator, he was defensive coordinator 1 year in Carolina, and didn't have the secondary personnel to play out there. So that's another reason why they played a lot of 3 linebackers. So he's never had, like, I'd say, great personnel to work with. He had obviously Luke Kuechly and those guys for linebackers, but secondary, they lost Josh Norman. So like he no longer, and he had the 3 think the Panthers drafted 3 cornerbacks that year, so he was having to deal with like rookie guys in the secondary, and still was productive from a defensive standpoint with what he was able to do there. Obviously went to Arizona. There, they lost like multiple different personnel players from the secondary, and then they've just never had good linebackers there. So you're kind of you're picking your poison when it comes to that. So you do see him adjusting to his personnel. I think what you obviously want to hope for is that you see him adjust to using a lot more press man with the Browns, because you have 2 cornerbacks. That's absolutely what they're best at. And that's also a scheme that allows the pressure to get to the quarterback faster by just basically holding, jamming those guys at the line of scrimmage, or just holding, just rerouting them slightly, rather than letting them free releases and then get into the open zones.
Right on. All right. Breaking news out of Berea. Baker Mayfield shaved. Do you want to comment?
No. What does it look like?
No.
What does it look like?
It looks like I don't like he used to look, I guess.
Is it like clean shaven, or is it like
clean? Clean shaven. Clean shaven Baker. It looks like he's hitting up the food trucks again back in college. That's what it looks like. Oh man,
he looks skinny. I just saw the picture. He looks skinny, and he looks
right. Well, he did. He lost probably 5 pounds of hair off his face.
Right.
Let's get into Baker a little bit, because you wrote Baker Mayfield is the quarterback the Browns have been looking for, the one Cleveland deserves, and the one it needs right now. How do you think that was back in September?
Actually, I wrote that in April before the Browns drafted Baker Mayfield.
Oh, right on.
We had our analyst 7-round mock draft or whatever, and obviously I'm picking for the Cleveland Browns, and I had the first pick, and I picked Mayfield, and that's what I wrote because, I was a big believer in him at that point. And I think he did nothing in his rookie season to say otherwise. You just obviously now hope that he continues on his growth and his basically progression. I think he was everything as advertised as a rookie. I think he was a little bit more inaccurate than I was, maybe expecting coming out. Part of that is a lot of what accuracy is. Obviously, he's still super accurate, and there's, we just put out an article and some videos at ProFootballFocus.com about quarterbacks' accuracy, by depth of target in the field or whatever, and he still was still in the top 5 in intermediate and deep. A little bit lower down in the at the intermediate level. I meant to say short. He was the most accurate in short. So intermediate level is a lot of just knowing what you're seeing and being confident in making those throws. And so I think as a rookie, you're naturally going to be less confident about fitting these throws into these tighter windows that you're going to see at the intermediate level, which is 11 to 19 yards or 10 to 19 yards. So what things that I want to see him improve on are obviously his accuracy at the intermediate level, because that's essentially the money area of the field where you're moving the chains. And that's not an area where you saw Patrick Mahomes really thrive at last year. And I think Baker can obviously get there, because he was fantastic at that level, and even in tight coverages and stuff like that in college. So he's just going to have more confidence this year. He's going to be in a scheme and a system that is obviously much more friendly and for the system, for the team, the players, and whatnot. So his trajectory, and obviously you just want to see him take the next step, and I think he'll do that this year.
It sure is going to be fun to go through the season with him. Full season, full off season. I'm looking forward to it.
And obviously, I don't know if people caught it, but that quote that I say is, Baker Mayfield is the quarterback the Browns have been looking for. The one that Cleveland deserves and one it needs right now is a kind of a playoff of like the Dark Knight from the Dark Knight or whatever. I'm talking about Batman, but
right.
What is it? Batman. He's not he's the hero that the city needs or deserves, but it's not the one that it needs right now. But and I always switch it up that he's the one that Cleveland deserves and they need. And he did, obviously prove that right, because like as soon as you land that franchise quarterback, like his presence is what allowed everything to happen in this offseason. Like if you don't have the quarterback, you don't go out and get Odell Beckham Jr. because you're not trading for OBJ if your quarterback is Deshaun Kaiser. Like,
I'm just glad you didn't say Cody Kessler.
Well, like you're not doing it with him either. You're not doing it if like you have the season that, like if you decided to draft Josh Rosen, like Josh Rosen if he has his that type of season, you're not trading for these guys like that. You're going more of the route that like the Rams did with Jared Goff, where it's like, hey, we're gonna get some better pieces around you, but we're not gonna go all out on these guys because we don't want to, we think that you can become better and improve, which obviously Jared Goff did, but like we're not gonna go get the superstars or whatever to put around you. For Baker, that makes much more sense because it's like, all right, whatever, I know there's Sashi truthers out there and there's Sashi haters out there, but what Sashi Brown was able to do, at least in terms of setting them up to be able to do this, I mean, that's what it was all set up to do. Is like once we get the quarterback, all in, you go all in, and you have a 4-year or window to win it all. And you do that, and you have the cap, and you have the draft capital to do it. And
but it was also, didn't it feel like it's also, don't put the quarterback in a position where he can't win. Let's set up the team and bring in the quarterback. Where it's like, how much does that matter? Where you have a guy like Josh Rosen who gets put in just a terrible spot. I mean, if anybody needs a good offensive line, it's Josh Rosen. You put him behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. And then you have Larry Fitzgerald, but he's aging. You get Kirk, who's a nice wide receiver, but a rookie. It's different for Baker, who the wide receivers weren't great last year, but he comes in with a really good offense, a pretty solid offensive line and playmakers around it. And then you add, Beckham. And now it's like, dang, we're really working with something here. And he's put in a better position.
What the Browns have done, what the Browns did correctly, was being able to keep that offensive line mostly together, of having a really solid offensive line. Obviously, with Joe Thomas retiring, it kind of changed, kind of put a little wrench into that. But the whole plan was for Sashi. Obviously, 2016 was a tank year, but 2017 was never meant to be an 0-16 year. They were expecting to win games that year, so it wasn't a 2-year tank. It was a 1-year tank to set us up to be able to get the draft capital and build that way. And they were actually obviously hoping to win games in 2017. But in the offseason of before, you obviously went out and got Kevin Zeitler and J.C. Tretter. And so then you had four pieces of the offensive line solidified there for if there was to have a quarterback that can come into a good situation. Because obviously like offensive line matters for the young players, for the young quarterbacks like that, so that they are comfortable in the pocket, because you want to keep them clean. Obviously, that's not going to be the case every single snap. You're averaging about on a third of your dropbacks that you're going to be under pressure, but you obviously want to be able to minimize the quick pressure when it does come, and obviously keep them clean. They weren't able to do that with Josh Rosen. Jared Goff, his rookie year, they weren't able to do that for him as well. So like, you're right. They have to come into at least somewhat of a good situation to be protected, so that you can kind of see what you do have. But so the Browns did it right in that regard. Teams have struggled to and identify offensive linemen to put out on the field that are can keep your quarterback clean. Like you've seen it in Arizona for a long time now. They give up. They're one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL for a number of years now. Even when Carson Palmer was there, he had 1 year where he had the MVP caliber season in 2015. That was because he was just able to get the ball out a little bit more quickly, even when pressure was there, and the pressure wasn't as quick as it was in the other years around that. So like, it was just kind of like the perfect storm for it. But then still, like, he still was not great under pressure when it came to quick pressure. So you saw it all kind of unravel in 2016, and even in that playoff game where he, threw, I don't know, 20 interceptions, it seemed like. So, you want to, I'm long-winded here. I apologize, but you want to set these guys up that they come into at least an offensive line that can protect them and keep them clean. And Baker was obviously had that benefit of doing that. Josh Rosen did not. Josh Allen did not. Sam Darnold had a better offensive line than those other teams, you saw some of the good that he could do.
Right. Makes complete sense. How was Baker against pressure last year?
I would have to pull the number up. I don't, but off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
No, I mean, he was pretty solid. From what I recall, a lot of things that we chart things like obviously pressure, but another thing that we chart is whether the quarterback is throwing in rhythm or not. And so rhythm would just be, you hit your drop back, you hit that back foot, and essentially you've got 1 or 2 hitches and balls out. Like you're basically throwing it to the read that you're wanting to throw it. And then when you're talking about out of rhythm, what some things that can get you out of rhythm are obviously pressure. The coverage is good on the back end that takes you out of rhythm. Combination of both. You passing up an open read that takes you out of rhythm for whatever reason. So like when Baker was actually out of rhythm, he had the second highest grade in the NFL. So
wow.
Most quarterback, I mean, and it wasn't an elite grade. It was like in the upper 70s or right around 80 was his grade. I think Patrick Mahomes was number 1, but you saw his ability to improvise out of structure, and that was part of it. So like he did really well, but he also was played extremely well from a clean pocket too. So you have both of those as good. You want to see him to continue to improve from a clean pocket, and hopefully he's able to like somewhat maintain that level of play out of structure, because out of structure, under pressure type play, you can like I was saying with Carson Palmer, you can thrive from it one year and then you struggle badly the next year because it's just not stable of a metric to be able to continue to perform that well in those circumstances.
Good stuff. Where are you at with David Njoku? Because this seems to be, I guess you can probably just go into the tight end class, or our tight end group in general. But I really want to know what do you expect out of David Njoku this year?
I expect him to continue to make strides like he did last year. You saw and especially in the second half of the season, early on in that year, he struggled with drops and stuff like that, and then obviously shored those up, but. He was a guy that coming out, I knew that, obviously he's extremely raw. He has all the natural ability and stuff. But if he can continue to have sure hands and just develop like you expect him to, I expect him to, to be, a top 10 tight end this year in terms of just grade and numbers or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him. Like OJ Howard was fantastic for the Bucks last year, and obviously Monken coming over here will help to utilize the tight end position a little bit better. But really, like the middle of the field should be wide open for him to hit the seam ball and just the crossers and get into the flats and stuff like that. He should be able to find a lot of space to work with. So I expect him to have a big year for a tight end.
Yeah, that's what I think. Also, he takes one big step, like you said, extremely raw coming out, super young. I think he might have been either the youngest or the second youngest guy in that draft, still only 22 years old. But yeah, I'm hoping that he takes another step. We get a guy that's like Travis Kelce level of a receiver with him. The other name that's coming out of OTAs right now is Antonio Callaway, and how much better he looks just in shape this year. And like, what do you think his ceiling is? Where do you think he can go?
It obviously makes sense because in 2017 he didn't play football, and so you come into from a not playing football for over a year to playing a ton of snaps early on in 2018. He was obviously going to struggle. Like the way they handled him early on was bad, and then once Freddie got in there, he reduced his number of snaps like considerably every single game. You're looking at the first half of the season, he was 50 plus from weeks 2 to 8, and then he didn't break 50 the rest of the year once Freddie took over. He was basically right around 40 for every single game, and then so what you saw from him was better utilization. And I think obviously if he has his mind right, like he's a guy that we had a second round grade on last year, despite not playing at all in 2017. So because he has all this natural ability, and I think like he's really going to surprise. And like that obviously that with Odell Beckham Jr. you got a stacked wide receiver room, but like it like even the depth of it is pretty impressive, because even Higgins and Callaway, both guys are like really, really solid number 3s in the NFL, with a tremendous amount of ability. And I think Callaway, you saw him get a lot more comfortable in Freddie's scheme, being utilized in ways that more conducive to him, not being out there for 50 plus snaps a game. So I expect him to take another step, and you're not going to see, obviously OBJ is going to be the main target guy along with Jarvis, but I think he's going to be like that Deshaun Jackson type role that Todd Monken had. And
yeah, super efficient, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, what Deshaun Jackson was like a 20-yard reception last year guy, which seems a lot more rare today. It seems like back in the day, they used to have, every team would have a Flipper Anderson who averaged 25 yards a catch, but he only caught like 25 passes on the year or something.
Yeah, the game used to be such a vertical, just bomb it downfield type game. And then it's obviously not the case anymore. You do somewhat get that kind of a guy, but yeah, he averaged almost 19 yards a catch last year. And that's, he's about 17.5 in his career. So, if you can get that out of Antonio Callaway, but I think Antonio Callaway is a more complete, like in terms of like what he can bring to the table. I'm not going to say he's better than Deshaun Jackson right now, because Jackson's been fantastic in his career, but like I think his skill set is more well-rounded than Jackson's is. So like if that can all be cultivated and utilized, he can do that role and then more.
Right on. What do you think about just the Browns in the AFC North, comparing us to the other teams? Because I know you go pretty in depth with this. So, like, where do you think we sit right now? What do you have us for a record? And then when you compare us, like, who's going to be the other teams there that are on the top of the AFC North?
Well, you're record wise, I mean, the fanboy would say they're 12-4 / 13-3. I think realistically they can get there to the 12-4 mark. But if you get that 10 wins, that seems reasonable. That seems very reasonable to be able to get there. I think when it comes to the rest of the AFC North, obviously you've got Pittsburgh and Baltimore that will be competing for the title. I don't think Baltimore I think they have the wrong approach about, from an offensive perspective of being able to win in this division and win in the NFL nowadays. I think they're going to I think struggle to like an 8-8 type season. Pittsburgh is probably the main contender, because as long, despite losing Antonio Brown, as long as you got Ben Roethlisberger there, they're always going to be probably a 10-win type team. As long as everything's going well for them. I know that they missed out on the playoffs last year at like 9 wins, but that's the type of caliber team that they're going to be facing in Pittsburgh. Right. They're not going to be as good on offense because they're losing Antonio Brown, and he's a guy that was just constantly double teamed and had defenses obviously rolling coverages to his side, and it opened up things for like Juju Smith-Schuster and the rest of the offense. And without him, they're going to be relying on Juju to kind of be that role. And he's not the caliber player that Antonio Brown is. Like, Juju's graded well for us and in his 2 seasons with the Steelers, but he's just not that type of player yet. And so I think you're going to see an offense that's going to have to utilize maybe all the players on the field rather than, being able to force feed it to Antonio Brown. But they're not going to be able to rely on, he's taken away 2 of these defenders, so it's going to open up the field for these guys. So nobody's going to have that kind of, leverage or whatever against defenses. So I think they're going to struggle on offensively compared to previous years. But I think the Browns on paper should be able to win this division. And I obviously didn't mention anything about the Bengals, but I think the Bengals are going to be better than what people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, they were injured last year. They had a lot of injuries, and that's always the X factor, right?
Yeah, right. Andy Dalton is, he's a solid NFL quarterback. I mean, he's not a top tier guy. He's never going to be. But you still have AJ Green. Tyler Boyd is a very good slot receiver for them. If they can get health out of their tight end and Tyler Eifert's still with them. I think he signed.
I think they signed him to a 1-year deal.
Yeah,
again
so
or something. Yeah. And then they re-signed the other kid that played not Croft, but the other starts with a U, I believe. I can't think of his name.
Uzoma.
Yeah.
Uzoma. Yep. So I mean, I think, and then obviously, like from the running back position, they got talent there. So like, what for them, it's a matter of having an offensive line that's going to be able to protect Dalton. And if that comes together, they're going to have a solid offense because Dalton is a solid quarterback. He can make things happen, and then you have 2 legit wide receivers, and I think John Ross can be utilized better, and I think he will under Zach Taylor. And it's also a defense that still has a phenomenal defensive line in Carlos Dunlap, Geno Adkins, Andrew Billings is a really good nose tackle for them. Carl Lawson's going to be coming back from injury, so he's a great pass rusher. Sam Hubbard's a solid rotational piece there. So is Jordan Willis. So they have a defensive line that's going to get pressure on the quarterback and cause offensive lines fits in the AFC North. What's the question for them is obviously the linebacker position and in the secondary, because William Jackson's he's a great cornerback for them. But everything else around, Jesse Bates is another guy that I really liked as a safety coming out a couple of years. He as a rookie, he did well for them. So if they can have a improvement from their secondary from last year, I mean, I think they're going to be like in contention for most of the year for the like wild card position. I don't, people keep throwing them out there as a 3 or 4 win team. They have talent on the team. I think people kind of just overlook it because it's the Bengals, and it's always been like they just always underperform what they should be doing. But like you said, it had a lot of bad injuries last year. AJ Green and Andy Dalton both were injured. Carl Lawson was injured. So it's these pieces will be coming back if they stay healthy. They'll be formidable.
Yeah, that's a tough division from top to bottom. It's good. It's got to be one of the best divisions in the league.
Right, and I didn't even mention the Baltimore Ravens defense, and yes, they've lost some pieces there, but they're getting Earl Thomas. Thomas is insane. Like he's a first ballot Hall of Famer in my opinion. He's been the best. He's been the best safety in the NFL for 7 straight years or whatever it is since he basically he came into the league, was excellent from the get go, basically he was the one that held everything together in that Seahawks defense of the Legion of Boom, and his play recognition and instincts and as a deep free safety are just incredible. And he's going to put, they had replacing Eric Weddle, who was great, and and Earl Thomas is on another level better. And then so they still have their cornerbacks there, and Marvin Humphrey, Marlon Humphrey, and Young. I can't remember his first name from the slot.
Taven Young, right?
Taven Young, and so they've got good Jimmy Smith as well. They're going to be really good defensively because they're building that right, and that's what John. I think it was John or
John Harbaugh. Yep.
John. I never remember their names. They're two brothers, but he's always got them good there, and he's always going to be solid in special teams. The question is going to be is that I think that their offense approach is wrong, and that's what wins you games in the NFL. They're going to still be a very, very tough out though because of that defense.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Lamar Jackson doesn't take a step forward. I mean, that's what I'm praying for.
He's not an accurate quarterback.
Yep. That's exactly, and he can make plays with his feet all day, but I mean, live and die in the NFL as a quarterback making plays with your feet. I mean, that's only going to last so long, I imagine.
Right. He's not a great slider too. So like teams, then so you saw it in the playoffs or even the second half of that Browns game, the Week 17, where they started figuring it out. Like, all right, they completely shut down that running attack in the second half, and then in the playoffs, the Chargers just completely shut it down. So you have to be able to win as a pocket passer in the NFL, yeah. And he doesn't have the accuracy to do that. He's got a weird hitch in his throwing motion, and it's not a natural smooth sling. So there's issues with his mechanics, but it's essentially like he's just not an accurate passer. He never has been.
Right.
It's all been about the legs and then being able to make plays that way.
Right on.
I got one more. We can let you go, unless you got
what's that?
One more. We can let you go, John. Unless you get a bunch.
No, I mean we can wrap it up right now. Sad news, Adam, one of our guys. We were hoping to get year 3 as a Brown. Ricardo Lewis. He had the neck injury. He goes. We cut him. Goes to Miami. Tears his ACL or something today. He's going to be out for the year. So the Ricardo Lewis, that's a little news era, may be officially over. So
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
can't stay.
I mean, he was bad. He was bad for 2 years, but he has all kinds of athletic ability. Where like, man, if he could just figure out how to catch, this kid could actually probably play.
Right, like it's a funny thing. Like learn how to be a receiver, and you'll be a good receiver.
Right. Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
What if Lamar Jackson learned how to be a quarterback? We're screwed.
Well, it's you look at like at he had awesome workout numbers, but like, did Antonio Brown have awesome workout numbers?
No.
Oh. Ricardo Lewis was on a run heavy team in college that wasn't productive, and he had all this athletic ability, and he obviously went in the 5th round. So it's like I think it was 5th round. So like you look at basically as a 5th rounder, or he's a 4th rounder. He was 4th. Yeah. But still, even as a day 3 selection in the NFL, you're looking at a less than 10% chance of making it in the NFL. So you're taking shots on guys on day 3. And especially with that draft, obviously the differences that they did, you took a Rashard Higgins and you took a Ricardo Lewis.
Completely opposite styles.
Opposite. Ricardo Lewis, not productive in college, super athletic. Rashard Higgins, super productive in college, doesn't have the athleticism, but we've seen it. Rashard Higgins is the better receiver because he knows how to run routes. He has the natural hands. He knows how to set up defenders to be able to break open. And he's still solid after the catch, and he works at his craft. And I don't know about, Lewis's work ethic is probably good, but he just doesn't have that natural ability as a wide receiver to know how to use the defense's leverages against them to get open. And then doesn't have the natural hands. And so if you just don't have that, like you're not going to make it. And I think it kind of shows like you've seen players that are not all that productive and they can make it in NFL rosters and stick around. But I just think the whole, you just have to, every player is different, right? Like it's just how it is. Like Lewis had all this, like you talk about Lewis with like this is the workout stuff. It's like, oh, he has monster workouts. He has all this upside. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, do you understand what upside means? Where is his upside? Just because he's super athletic, he has upside? Like,
Yeah, it's like with Josh Allen as a quarterback. Like he's got upside because he can throw a ball right through the wall, a brick wall. But the problem is he can't throw it. He can't hit the brick wall, right? So
Right.
you go, well, if he could hit the wall, he's got upside, right? So that's the problem. It's just you don't have all the pieces put together, and Lamar Jackson, it maybe will happen, but what are the chances? So then you're making a bet, and that's why Lamar Jackson falls to the end of the first round. Or did he go in the second?
Yeah,
top of the second, I can't remember. But and Baker Mayfield goes first. He's got the pieces together. You're making a bet. That's the way we always talk about it here. It's like you want to make a safe bet. It's a poker game. You want to know what the odds are of your hand playing against other hands, and you just try to have formulate the best opinion you can. You're going to miss, you're going to hit, and when you're in the fourth to seventh round, you're going to be taking more shots on guys to see if you can, maybe make them into that player you think they can be than what you would in the first and second round.
Yeah, exactly. It's throwing darts at a board essentially when it comes to the draft, and you want to increase your dart throwing ability by taking bets on certain traits and certain types of production. So
yeah, and having all the information, which makes no sense when people are like, oh, you can just this guy's a football guy and he doesn't use analytics. Like what, he just doesn't want to have information. Makes zero sense. What hurts about having information?
Well, it's like with Corey Coleman, right? Like all the athletic ability in the world and was super productive. And you can see that he could run. He had a limited route tree at Baylor, but he could run those routes extremely well. But his work ethic, as we find out after he comes to the NFL, something that from outsider perspective, like anybody can't see. Like he says all the right things in the media, or what the coaches say about him in the media, that he has that fire that fire mentality or whatever. But when it came down to it, he talked a big game, but he didn't actually work on his craft, and that's obviously why he's basically now he pretty much was cut and bounced around the league a bunch, and he's with the Giants right now, and is just hasn't caught on with like what you'd expected him to do because he didn't have the work ethic. Now, if you as a player evaluator, as a GM or whatever, you have to be able to from a personality test or whatever, just knowing him and getting and talking to him and stuff like that, realize if what type of a work and what type of time commitment he's going to put into it, because he basically was drafted and I guess was expected to start, and
that's part of the problem. That like I was saying before, that's why it's nice for like Greedy to come in and not be given the job when you're on a good team. In the Pittsburgh Steelers, their first round draft picks, like he's probably going to play this year. They trade up, they have to fill that roster spot. But in most years, their first round draft pick sits. He's a backup for the first year. And the Browns have never been in that position. And now we're in that position to go, oh, you got to actually come in here and earn your job. And how much harder of a worker does that make you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Sashi Brown, another one of his faults was having a roster full of super young guys that like you draft a guy and he comes in there and essentially has a starting spot waiting for him. And I think I understand why he did that. Like, all right, let's just throw these guys out there. They're going to figure it out. But really, obviously that was not quite the right approach or whatever. And for some people, for some it Joe Schobert or whatever, he thrived. He was able to rise above it, and he's now one of the better linebackers in the NFL. But
yeah, I mean, also for Corey Coleman, just think about this. Like, you come in and your quarterback is, RG3 is only there for a game. And then you got Cody Kessler, Clipboard Jesus. You got, who else? Who was our other quarterback? And you're going, oh, okay, I come in as a rookie. I get put in this position to, like, try to be, like, a star on the team because there's literally no talent around me. Terrell Pryor, who can barely get 500 yards per season, ends up getting 1,000 yards for the Browns. Just due to the fact that somebody has to get the ball, right? Yeah. It's like the Josh Rosen thing. Like, sometimes teams are putting their players in such bad positions that there's just no way they can succeed. Yeah. And I feel bad for those guys.
Well, it's what they, a lot of times is where you're drafted. It's not about your ability. Like a lot of these guys obviously have the ability, but like the team that you're drafted to does matter. Like the fit, the scheme, the people around you. Yeah. Like it all matters. Like, and you have to have the right culture in place and the right people around you to be able to succeed. Like you can, it's just like with, like we were talking about Cameron earlier. I know we're kind of rambling now, but like Cameron Irving, he goes to Kansas City. He's in a situation that's better for him because he's got the players around him, the scheme that protects him and stuff like that, that he doesn't get the ridicule of, oh yeah, you were a first round pick, you better be at X level or whatever. And every mistake that you make is going to be, repeatedly shown on social media for the next, 24 hours.
It was a lot of mistakes.
Right. It was, but like, it's just the nature of being in the right team, right, situation, being able to be groomed and stuff like that properly, and
the good teams seem to put those players in that position too. Like when the Steelers drafted Sutton Smith, and I'm like, this guy's only going to fit in like certain styles. They draft Sutton Smith, and I went, figures. Like this is like perfect for him, right? Like, God damn it, Sutton's like he's way too small probably for the league. I don't know if he'll ever end up doing anything, but if the one team's going to take you and be able to rush you off the edge and just get the most out of you, it's going to be them with what they like to do.
Yeah,
it drives me nuts.
Just waiting for my guy Ron Bingham to get picked up by a team.
He didn't get picked up at all because we had talked about him in the draft process too. He had a ton of pressures.
He had the second highest pass rush grade in all of FBS last year. Dude is ridiculous, but he tore his MCL in the bowl game, and so he had surgery obviously, and he's like pretty much all draft prep he was rehabbing that and didn't do any workouts. Apparently he lost some weight too, so he's down into like the 220s. I think his playing weight was like around 240, 245. So that was an issue too, but I'm still kind of surprised that he hasn't, maybe it's a personality thing. I have no idea. I don't know the guy, but he wasn't even drafted, but you get guys like Sutton Smith who has like no discernible pass rush moves, and you're really going to be projecting like, all right, maybe hopefully you can make it as a linebacker who blitzes in sub packages and stuff like that. But Bingham is the guy that has like a full arsenal of pass rush moves that definitely should have been drafted. In my opinion, dude is insane. All right. Just pull on his tape, man. He is insane.
Yeah, we watched him. We went into him some and talked about him. Definitely because of just looking at his overall pressure. They're like, good God, man, this guy gets a lot. And then they played Alabama. They had the tape against Alabama where he actually that was Alabama they played, right?
They played Alabama this year.
Yeah, where he's actually. Half the time you watch these small schools against a team like Alabama and nobody belongs on the field with him, and then he actually shows up and you go, okay, well, he's playing.
Yeah, he beat Jonah Williams, a couple times in that game too. So it's not like he was going up against like their tight end and beating them. He actually was facing Jonah Williams, 11th overall pick type guy. And it's not his fault that that the level of competition, the only Power 5 team he played was Alabama, and then the rest of it was the Sun Belt and lower, other non-Power 5 schools. But he just wrecked them. Like he went up against the teams that he played and wrecked them. What else are you supposed to do?
Yeah, right. You can only play the ones they put on your schedule.
Yep.
So, all right. Anything else, Adam? I got to go pick up the kid from school.
No. Thanks, John. Appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone find your work?
Yeah, my pleasure, fellas. Follow me on Twitter at John Kosko 3, which is JOHNKOSKO, the number 3. And then I haven't written an article in a while at ProFootballFocus.com, but you can go over there and see all sorts of great stuff at that site. And then if you wanted to get an Edge or an Elite subscription, we have discounts going on all the time. You can always ask me personally. I can get you a 15% discount on those, and that gets you, the draft guide, a free agent guide that we have, quarterback annual, which is, 600 some odd pages of quarterback gold information. And obviously you get our player grades and signature stats and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Perfect, man. Thank you again. Greg, where can they find us at?
You can hit us up on Twitter at STS Podcast, and our email is
survivingtheseason@gmail.com. Thank you much, everybody. John, thank you again. Greg, tell them what we say.
Keep on surviving.